So here we are going to look at the code of the server application. So we have two applications, server and client. It's pretty straightforward. If you are new to Python, don't worry about it. I'll take you through it, like I mentioned before. So basically, it is a simple socket application, which has a server and a client, and we are going to look at server. So this is the code we are going to look at. So it is a simple socket application, and this is the server code of the socket application. Socket application has server and client, and this is the server. So this is equivalent to the Google or any web server or any server for that matter. So somewhere in all those servers, a code similar to this is sitting, which has a bind, listen, accept, etc. So throughout the training, we will be digging this one single application. So probably this is the first and last Python application, or any application for that matter, we are going to look in this particular training. So we are going to deal with some 10 lines of code throughout this particular training. So this is the server. Let's have a quick look at the client. I have not explained anything. That's what we're going to do next. Before that, let's see the client. So this is the client equivalent to the server. So first we will see the server, and then we will look at the client. At the end of the day, it is nothing but a networking hello world application. So it is more or less a hello world server and client. So a lot of you guys are not familiar with Python. I'm not expecting you to be Python guru as well to look into it. So one of the things what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the actual code of this, and I'm going to further simplify this program. So this is the standard way of writing a socket server in Python, but we are going to deviate a little bit from the standard and making it looking similar, but with a lot of other decorations out of the way. So let's do that. Let me copy this code and go to this folder. So I'm going to make this listen server underscore original.py.txt. I'm doing this because I'll be sharing these files with you, and you can use it later in the training. That's why I'm saving this file before modifying it. So the original file is here, the actual Python program. So this file I'm going to modify. Now I'm going to do same with the client as well. The client is in a different Visual Studio Code instance. So let me do that. So there is a server in this folder as well, but that's not the server I'm using, but it's pretty much the same code. So I'm going to copy this and create. So I'm going to save it, and now we are good to change our code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove a lot of decorations, useful decorations in fact, but which are very Python specific and looking like very Pythony. So I'm going to change the statement to s equal to. S is a variable, the socket variable. I'll explain everything after changing it. If I don't do this, I'll have to go through a lot of Python related syntax and complications, which is not the purpose of the training. So I'm going to delete all these things, making it very simple and straightforward. Even this loop I'm going to change, because we are not going to execute the loop more than once. Again, we are not handling any kind of error situation. Pretty much we have removed all kind of error handling. That's what we have done essentially here. So our code is very linear, straightforward, calling a bunch of functions. Let me save this, and we will change the client as well, like what we have done with the server. S equal to, removing this. So don't worry about it. This is not a good thing we are doing, but we know exactly what we are doing, and we are just simplifying things. Now, after the simplification, let's make sure that things works before we proceed. Let's hope that we are not going to get any errors. Looks like the server is listening correctly. Client worked as expected. Let's see server. Yeah, one additional statement we can add is this in server. Again, we are running to make sure that our current modification really works. Yeah, client worked and the server also worked. All right, so now we are good to go. So we have reduced the complication of the application. Now let's go through the code of server. So as far as the networking is concerned, probably this is one of the single most important program as far as application is concerned or application layer is concerned. So import socket. Socket is a group of functions and classes and things like that, which is abstracted for the purpose mostly for networking. There are other things you can do with socket, but normally when we talk about sockets in computer programming, we are talking about networking. We are talking about abstracting the complexity of computer networking. Basically, we are trying to access networking stack in computing like files, just read and write data. That is the purpose of socket. Now what it does, just like mentioned, we read and write things into it, receive and send. That's the main purpose of it. Now, what protocol we are using, what is a protocol, all those kind of things we'll see. We are not going to understand this program until the end of this training, because the training is all about this program, what it does internally. So every single line we will dissect throughout this training. The idea of this particular session is just to get an overall feel of this code, not to fully understand everything about it. So import socket. Socket is a library in almost all programming language which abstracts the complexity of networking. So that is line number 3, import socket. Now, what object we are creating? The object is of type socket, and we are passing certain details to it. So we have different types of socket, but we are telling that what we want to do is networking stuff. Basically, these are the most common arguments we use, at least one of the most common arguments we use when we create a network socket. Again, we will get into the details later. Now, the operation we are doing is bind. Bind takes mainly 2 information. One is something called an IP address, another is port. Again, something we will see in detail later. Basically 2 numbers it takes. One number is called IP address, another number is called port number. Then we are telling the system that we are going to listen using this particular socket. So this is where this is the code, or this 2 lines of code is what makes a server different from the client. So server is different from the client, which we are going to see next because of this 2 lines, listen and accept. Those are the things which client doesn't do. Let's pay attention to it, listen and accept. So with the socket we are listening here, what we are listening for? We are listening for client connections. We'll see that. Again, a lot of details are there. 7, line number 7 is very much connected to 6, but 7 is a blocking call. Like if you have seen the input function in Python to accept user inputs from the console. The accept is very similar to that. It waits until some connection is coming from the client. And what it is returning? It is returning the connection and the address details. So it is giving the details about the client which is connecting to us. Line number 8, just a print statement of this thing. Whatever it is coming, it is printing it there. 9, we are using that connection to receive information. This is another blocking call. This is another call like the input, console input. This blocks until we get the data from the client. It waits, not infinitely. There are timeouts, but doesn't matter to us. Another blocking call, we are printing the data which is obtained from the client, and we are sending some data to the client. And we can close the connection and all kind of things, but in this case we are not doing anything because we are just trying to learn a couple of things rather than too much of cleanup and stuff. So in this case we are sending the exact same data which client is sending to us. We'll make some modifications later, but for the time being we are sending the exact same data which client is sending. That is the overall summary of the code of the server, listen server, socket listen server. So creation of the socket, bind, which tells you where to bind, then listen, accept, receive, send. There is a close as well, but we are ignoring it to avoid too much details. So these are the bare minimum things you need to send some packets on a TCP socket. Again, like I mentioned, we don't know much about it. Although we heard a lot of terms, we don't know what it really does behind the scenes. But that's all right. What we can do next is look at the code of the client to get a feel of the stuff which the client does when server is doing this. Now to conclude, we have seen the code of the server application in a socket programming interface of Python. Now what we are going to do next is we are going to see the code of the client.